fellow citizens, our way of life, our very freedom came under attack in a series of deliberate and deadly terrorist acts.
Several shots were fired as President Kennedy's motorcade passed through downtown Dallas.
None of us will ever forget this day. Yet we go forward to defend freedom and all that is good and just in our world.
This is Houston. Say again, please. Houston, we've had a problem.
Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
I have a dream. My 4 little children one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today.
Welcome to the Hagmann Daily Show, weekdays 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern Time. And now your hosts, Joe Hagmann and Jon Robberson.
Hello and welcome to this Friday, April 6, 2018 edition of the Hagmann Daily Show. Joe Hagmann here, and I'm going to be flying solo today as John is traveling to the West Coast to finish up some personal business that he's taking care of. That this trip has been planned for a while. He had to put it off twice, but he moved over here in last summer, and he moved from California, so he did not have a chance to do things like take care of his car and whatnot. So he's going to be traveling this next week and taking care of the rest of that business. But it's great to be here today. I have a great show planned for you today. We are going to cover a bunch of news in the first 30 minutes, and we're going to continue throughout the second half of the show. But I'm going to be joined by Chance from simplycleanfoods.net, our sponsor, and we're going to talk about a number of issues as well with Chance. And then in the last 10 minutes or so, we're going to talk about the products that he has at Simply Clean Foods. Well, where to start today? There is a lot going on. We have some jobs and economic numbers that have come out on this Friday. Also, I guess one of the big stories of the day so far is China warns arrogant America. When I woke up this morning, I put it on, opened my computer, and I saw this, and it was in big, bold, red print there on Drudge. And this is a report from CNBC. China will not hesitate with major response to new tariffs. Ministry of Commerce says we will immediately fight back with a major response. That was said on Friday. We have no other choice by the Chinese Ministry of Commerce. We feel America is very arrogant. They have taken a wrong action. The result is they will hurt themselves. If they release the list of $100 billion in tariffs, China is prepared and will not hesitate. We have prepared with a bottom line mindset and have planned detailed action. We won't start a war, but if someone does, we will definitely fight back. Not good words, not words you want to hear from one of the other major world powers, but I suspect that this is more about the threats in order to bring about change and action to the direction that we've seen this administration going in what it has been doing as far as trade. Now, many people see this as instability by the president, as we have seen him decide to really go a long way from previous presidents as when we're dealing with trade with international partners. And we have heard throughout the campaign of President Trump that he says, and rightfully so, that the United States has is at an unfair disadvantage in many of these trade deals. We saw the president get us out of the Trans-Pacific Partnership, and he's talking about renegotiating NAFTA, And what we see here is pushback from the Chinese. And they go on to say that and even though this is all talk, we have not actually levied any tariffs yet. This is just talk after the president said he was going to introduce tariffs. China fought back, said that they were going to do the same on other U.S. companies. And President Trump's response to that was to additionally add another $100 billion of tariffs against China. Now, the market has been more volatile over the last few weeks with this news of future trade relationships in the front and center of the headlines. But let's listen to what this report says and where the direction CNBC reporters and the mainstream media think we're going.
And a national public holiday here in China. And yet the Commerce Ministry scrambled together a last-minute press briefing for this topic. I can't tell you how unusual it is. And I think that it really goes to show just how seriously the Chinese are taking this response. So the Commerce Ministry just a couple of minutes ago said that China is well prepared.
All right. Well, that just cut off there.
If the U.S. releases its new list of $100 billion of products, we will immediately fight back without any hesitation. We won't rule out any option. Now, in terms of the comprehensive measures that the Chinese could possibly take, the Commerce Ministry spokesperson kept his cards very close to his chest. But what was also interesting, something that came up, is something that Kayla had also mentioned that has been coming out of the Trump administration, because the Commerce Ministry spokesperson was also asked what behind-the-scenes discussions have been taking place between the Chinese and the U.S. And the Commerce Ministry spokesperson said China has noticed similar information about negotiations from various American officials, but this is not what has happened. He says recently, U.S. and Chinese economic and trade officials haven't had any negotiations on trade issues. And when he was asked again, what will the Chinese do if the U.S. decides to, they said, upgrade escalate this situation, he said, we have a planned, detailed action in place. So obviously, China taking this very, very seriously. And something else that we've been seeing is in the state press, basically projecting the idea that China has higher tolerance for a trade war and to survive a trade war. And on social media, we are seeing the top trending topic is...
All right. I don't know about all that, about China being more suited to survive a long-term trade war. I'm far from an expert on these kind of matters, but digging into some of these reports, one thing that sticks out is the amount of debt China holds. And if they decided to, which I don't think they would in this case, but maybe you never know, to prevent some kind of conflict, a physical military conflict, as they might see being sprung from this, maybe they would take drastic measures in economic lines in order to try to nudge America and President Trump in the right direction. But what's the truth about the trade? I know that our trade deficit with China is already huge, and what we're trying to do is to lower that deficit. China is the largest holder of U.S. treasuries and American debt, and if they were to dump those, that could create a situation where you would see a rise in inflation. And that is the last thing we need as we're starting to see this economy turn around. It has not it has been better, I should say, not great, better, but it has a long way to go. And will these trade wars and even negotiations or lack thereof, will this lead to a downgrade of our economy or bringing down our economy? That is a real possibility. But we will talk more about that as we are able to do more research on the subject and bring guests on who are more suitable to talk about the details. One thing I want to make sure we talk about today is what is going on with Facebook. There are two stories out there that are very alarming, and this is in a recent wave of Facebook being in the news, from the misuse of customer data to the data mining and selling of that same data, as the Cambridge Analytica story has had updates from, we originally thought 50 million customers had their data misused and or sold. Well, it turns out that it is up to 87 million, and this should not be a surprise, but there are two stories on Facebook today that are very alarming. And the first one is where we're going to start here. Facebook sent a doctor on a secret mission to ask hospitals to share patient data. Now, this is pretty crazy. We're going to tell you why. Facebook has asked several major U.S. hospitals to share data without their patients, their illnesses, their prescriptions, for a proposed research project without their permission. Facebook was intending to match it with user data it had collected and help the hospitals figure out which patients might need special care or treatment. Now, that is obviously their excuse, and we're going to explain to you why we believe that is. The proposal never went past the planning phases and has been put on pause after the Cambridge Analytica data leak scandal raised public concerns over how Facebook and others collected and detailed information about its users. This work has not progressed past the planning phase, and we have not received, shared, or analyzed anyone's data, a Facebook spokesperson told CNBC. But as recently as last month, the company was talking to several health organizations, including the Sanford Medical School and American College of Cardiology, about giving a data sharing agreement. And this is, you think about the HIPAA laws, you think about what is one of the things that are held most sacred as far as information in this country, and that is Americans' medical information. There are a number of laws that are against the sharing of information, especially without the patient's permission. Now, we know after the passage of Obamacare and the new recent changes in the health laws, we have seen changes in this. At least I'm sure it's the same all across the country as it is here. They have these packets, at least the hospitals we go to here, UPMC. It's also an insurance company who I have my insurance from. And they have these packets of information that detail how they use your data and how you don't even have access to it at times, but they can use it for third-party agreements and whatnot. And we need to find out if our hospital and our hospitals would ever turn over our data to a company like Facebook. And I'm not saying that they can or they can't. It depends with each individual hospital rules. But from what I remember, at least up here at the UPMC, there are instances where they could get away with sharing data as long as it did not identify, you individually. But I'm going to have to go over those information packets I have and read them again, as it's been several years. But this is alarming. The report goes on to say, while the data would obscure personal identifiable information such as the patient's name, Facebook proposed using a common computer science technique called hashing to match individuals who existed in both sets. Facebook says the data would have been used only for research conducted by the medical community. The project could have raised new concerns about the massive amount of data Facebook collects about its users and how this data can be used in ways users never expected. Now, let me just throw this out there. A company like Facebook, where I'd say over 90% of Americans in this country have Facebook profiles, have included on those profiles personal information from where they live, where they work, who they're married to, who their friends are, what they do on a regular basis based on how much they update their status. Which then, Facebook has all this information and even access to information we don't even know about, like the access to your microphone, the access to your cameras on your laptops and your phones. And we know that they have monitored people and do monitor people in real time, as those permissions on accepting the apps are very detailed and nobody ever reads the fine print. But we've talked about in length in the past about how, you're talking about cat food and all of a sudden you see these advertisements for cat food popping up on your screen or anything, and it's no coincidence how that happens. But imagine a company like Facebook that basically has, and we have detailed this in the past also, it has profiles on people who don't even have accounts. It tracks people who don't even have accounts. So imagine how much more information it has on those people who have accounts, and then add on top of that medical records. And even without personally identifiable information, how hard would it be, do you think, to match these medical records up with people based on, maybe somebody updated their status saying they were at the hospital on this day and this time? I mean, there are so many different ways. So are the medical records without personal identifiable information just as dangerous to a company like Facebook as with the names on, as the medical information with the names on? Absolutely. And this is where the danger comes in. And who wants Facebook to have their private medical related data? It is absolutely mind-boggling that this is even in the news. But also, In another report, as we're going to kind of try to move along quickly here, social media users treated as experimental rats. EU data watchdog says he urges more changes to Facebook. And this is from the EU. Facebook needs to make sure the new tools it has introduced to help safeguard user data in the wake of the Cambridge Analytica scandal is done in practice and not on paper only. The European Union's top data watchdog told CNBC the social network has unveiled a raft new tool since news of the fiasco broke, with the aim of helping users understand and control how their data is used. And you can go on from there. This article was also up on the Drudge Report, and it says they go on to detail what we've been talking about, the far-reaching consequences of data collection and data sales, data mining through your own personal information, especially when you're under the impression that you have a much more privacy. And what are the possibilities of, we've seen only very limited the uses of this data, and what we've seen with the Cambridge Analytica is political purposes. But what about a hostile government? What about a government like China, who is maybe looking to or anticipating a war against the American population? How valuable would the personal information supplied by Facebook, from medical information to all the other information on Facebook, if that was supplied and sold to a government like China who wanted to launch some kind of operational war against the United States? These are things we need to think about, and I think get overlooked when talking about this stuff. But this is a very dangerous atmosphere they are setting with information, and we've already dug ourselves a hole. We are so far in this already. There's no turning back as far as what information Facebook and other social media platforms and intelligence communities have gathered and are capable of gathering through these devices. So it is a fight that we are well behind in, and not that we can ever really win it, but we need to at least understand what's going on. I want to kind of switch gears here. We had talked yesterday about Devin Nunes threatening legal action against the FBI and Department of Justice for the records of the original, what spun the Donald Trump Russia investigation, the original documents that led investigators to say, hey, we need a special prosecutor. I'm going to play this quick clip from Fox Business as Jason Chavez, former representative from Utah, has come on to give his, I'd say, opinion on what is unfolding here with the House Intelligence Committee. Here we go.
How did the Russia investigation really begin? House Intel Committee Chair Devin Nunes just picked a fight with the FBI and DOJ to find out. Nunes demanding an unredacted version of the FBI document that started the whole Trump-Russia probe. He's threatening legal action if he doesn't receive it by April 11th. So, does that mean we're going to get some answers? Joining me, former Utah Congressman and Fox News contributor Jason Chaffetz. Good afternoon and good evening to you.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, we were on the 5, and now we're here talking once again about this memo that launched the investigation. What do you think is inside of it?
Well, you don't know, and what concerns me is when you have, serious people like Devin Nunes and Trey Gowdy who have been looking at this file for a long time. Every time they want to see some real interesting parts of this, they're redacted. In order for the FBI to start any investigation of any level or severity, there is a 2-page or 1.5-page sheet that they fill out. Well, the curious part about this is they will not allow the senior-most people on the Intelligence Committee to look at it. And that raises a lot of red flags. Trey Gowdy has now gone over there twice to look at it. Yeah. And there's a particular paragraph that is entirely blocked out.
Yeah, that's interesting. And he said that. So what is the rationale of the FBI? Because obviously Trey Gowdy has a much higher security clearance than most civilians in this country and a vast majority of people working in the military.
They've argued about this. They got to a point where Devin Nunes issued letters. Then he issued subpoenas. Then the Speaker of the House got involved.
So what can he do? Can he have Christopher Wray arrested?
What I would like to see is actually, I would think they should bring up the Attorney General and the Director of the FBI, raise their hand and have them try to answer this question. What is it that you think Congress should not look at? When the American people fund it, then their representatives that are duly elected get to look at these things. I'll take it one step further.
Let us look at it.
Yes.
Let us see it. Let us figure out why you're using these resources to go after this administration. Is there something there? Is our country in jeopardy? Are we on the brink of a constitutional crisis? If so, then tell us about it. We deserve to know. That's what a democracy is.
My experience is most of these things that they don't want you to see, they're terribly embarrassing, or they expose something within the deep state that they really don't.
Is that what this is? Is that the CIA, the FBI, and the DOJ just trying to more deeply ensconce themselves in long-term?
Look at all the major
service
investigations, at least the ones I was involved with: Fast and Furious, the IRS scandal, the Benghazi situation, this collusion supposed stuff. Never do you get to where the administration allows you to see 100% of the documents. They always say, oh, well, we've given you thousands of this and thousands of that. Oh, really? It's usually that last 5% that they won't let you see, even if it's called an in-camera situation.
Yeah.
When you go into a secure compartmental information facility, even when you can't take notes, even when there's no staff, and they still won't let you
That's
see
ridiculous.
It.
That's so dumb. There's
They'll get it
There's
eventually.
no rhyme or reason, too much opacity.
All right, that was the report from Fox Business News, and I hope that transitioned okay. I actually had to, for the first time ever, pause the recording and go answer my door. It's amazing. You know, I don't, some days your phone doesn't ring, nobody bothers you, and then you go on air and boom, you know, your phone starts blowing up, people are ringing your doorbell, and before you know it, you got people ringing the doorbell and calling you, and it gets old after a while, especially when you record the same time every day and you tell people your schedule. It's like it doesn't register with some people. I don't quite understand that. But anyway, let's move forward. So that was Jason Chavez detailing the actions Devin Nunes is going to take against the FBI and DOJ for not disclosing the records of what spun the Trump-Russia investigation. And we have seen that this has turned into a 1.5-year-long witch hunt. And I'm going to play also a clip from CNN and this horrible panel. CNN, David Gergen. How many people remember David Gergen? He continues to be an analyst, a pundit. I remember him specifically from a documentary Alex Jones did on Bohemian Grove, where he snuck into the Bohemian Grove and documented the ceremony, the cremation of Care, where they burned they say it's an effigy of a human sacrifice in front of the owl Moloch in the California redwoods. Well, David Gergen was approached by Alex Jones in that documentary, and he was asked, why they do this in secret and what they do, and Gergen got really upset. And you can find just that clip on YouTube just by searching David Gergen. But this is what the left continues to do in their media, in their talking about President Trump. As Michael Savage talked about the other day, no more are the days of innocent until proven guilty. We see constantly the left has already decided long ago that President Trump was guilty of something called collusion, which isn't even a crime, by the way. And what they have done is try to prepare evidence to fit that conclusion. But what they did was misjudged their position, from Hillary Clinton and her attempt of winning the presidential election to the believability of these propaganda stories that they put out constantly, and this witch hunt of a bogus political investigation, which is the Mueller investigation. But let's listen to what CNN Anderson Cooper's show 360 was talking about last night with David Gergen and David Axelrod, the Obama former chief strategist. So let's listen to this, because still, here we are, almost a year and a half, almost 2 years into the Trump presidency. That will be coming up in the midterms, 2018 elections. That'll be the 2-year mark of his election. But they are still just badgering and hammering the president as though he were some, manipulative tyrant. Let's take a listen to what they were saying last night.
As dismissive of truth as he is of ethics. We go on and on and on. with this. I thought one thing was striking this week, Anderson, was a story in yesterday's front page of the New York Times about the leader of Turkey, Erdogan, who's giving speeches like this every day, 2 or 3 on national television. He pays no attention to facts. He tells total number of lies. He's very charismatic, and he maintains about a 40% steady approval rating. Guess who else has about 40% these days? Donald Trump. So it is a device that works up to a point, and I'm sad to say that it also can lead to the diminishment of democracy, if not its death.
David Gergen, you just said about this can lead to the death of democracy. I mean, do you really believe that?
Yes, I do. And this book that's out now called How Democracies Die by a couple of Harvard professors is very worth reading. It's short and it makes compelling points about how many countries, a dozen countries, that were democracies have become authoritarian countries. And it's happened again and again, and just in the last 20 years or so. It's happened again and again when extremists, strongmen, come to office and carry their countries in that direction. And when you don't have the kind of restraint and the kind of forbearance that a democracy needs, you can erode it very badly. And I now think increasingly it's becoming a threat. We're not there by any means, but it is a threat. And if we had, this president and we had a couple of more like him, I think we'd be very close.
All right, that was the report from Newsbusters, or the Media Research Center. And what's really interesting, and we talk about this at length, and we really haven't talked about it in a while, is we hear this word democracy thrown around constantly. And why do they continue to call the system of government we have in America a democracy, when really it's a representative republic? Well, what is the definition of democracy? Let's dig into this a little bit and see if we can make sense of this. It says, a system of government by the whole population or all the eligible members of a state, typically through elected representative. A state governed by a democracy. Control of an organization or group by the majority of its members. And there it is. It's a rule by the majority. Many people have likened it to 2 wolves and a sheep voting on what's for dinner. Well, what is the difference between the democracy and the republic? Well, this is one right here. We have the key difference between a democracy and a republic lies in the limits placed on a government by the law, which has implications for minority rights. Both forms of government tend to use a representational system, i.e., citizens who vote to elect politicians to represent their interests. And then it goes on from here. And what it really boils down to is elected officials and the not governing by majority rule. And a good example of that is the Electoral College. If we were to be in a democracy, the only thing that would count would be the popular vote. But each individual is represented equally. And it is not the majority of vote. It is the counties. You vote in the based on each county. You have a certain number of delegates that vote then for the president, and each delegate is represented by a certain number in the population. And we don't have to get too deep down into this, but just to say, we don't live in a democracy. We live in a constitutional republic. And every time they continue to push this idea of democracy, they continue to weaken our system of government. And they've done this systematically throughout the history, especially in from 1930s on, where they stopped referring to our system of government for what it truly was, and they've tried to turn it into something else. And this is another battle we've been fighting in the news media, in the history books, with academia, with science, with everybody else, is that we are not a democracy. And people need to understand the differences. And what is so frustrating is they being the powers that be, the media, to push this mindset on the American people. And it is very frustrating to watch our society degenerate to a point where we have become so complacent that people are just basically losing their minds. And I thought about this yesterday, driving home, listening to the 4th hour of InfoWars in my car. They were talking about this socialist utopian system that they want to set up, where everybody has an equal income. Nobody has to work. You have the universal basic income. Everything's provided to you by your government. And, you don't need guns because there's no crime and on and on and on with this utopian dream. But that would not be true, even if there was a universal basic income. I would say, one, if nobody's working, you talk about an increase in crime, you'd have a huge increase in crime. And do you think everybody getting the same amount of food and money every month would stop people from, one, scamming other people out of that money, two, controlling, setting up these controls like an old mafia neighborhood would? I mean, the whole idea is just mind-boggling that people actually think that this can be accomplished. And for what? All in the name of equality and not having to work. Can you imagine what the society would look like if nobody had to work? It would be a nightmare. I can't even imagine and don't want to think about it. But I was following some of these thoughts to their to their final conclusion yesterday when Jon Robberson was talking about this. And I just thought, oh my goodness, we are, this is what this is going to get us. We're going to live basically in the same ideal as a prison system, and that's what these people want, and that's what you get in prison. It's all equal. You get the same amount of yard time a day. Everybody gets 3 meals, and lights out at 10 or 9:30 or 10 o'clock or whatever. Do people really want to live like that? I'd much rather have equal opportunity, much more so than equal outcomes. And it is just amazing to see what passes for good ideas and what people's ideas of utopians are. And just the whole mindset is contrary to our whole the American dream. You have equal opportunity. You have the opportunity to work hard for something and to put the effort in and get that reward or your earnings out. But this idea of a utopian society where everybody's guaranteed an equal outcome will produce nothing but more complacency, more violence, and more spiritual wickedness. And we see how much that has brought our society down already. So when people, back to the original argument, democracy versus republic, definitions do matter, and it is important that we understand our history and what set us apart from so many of the other governments in times past, because we're getting so far away from that today with some of these ideals that they are continuing to promote in the mainstream. And they continue to do this and will continue. This is why they attack Donald Trump. This is why they, more importantly, attack his supporters, the Christian conservatives base, through the president, Donald Trump. And it is a battle that we can never stop fighting, because as soon as we do, they're going to take over, and it's just going to be a nightmare. We have Chance standing by, and I just want to throw this headline out. There have been a string of U.S. military aircraft crashes in 2018. Over just this last week, there have been 5 service members killed in 4 separate crashes of military personnel in just this week. What is the reason for this disturbing pattern? Fox News asks. There have been 5 non-combatant aviation crashes in 2018, killing 9 service members. 37 were killed in aircraft crashes last year, nearly double the number killed in 2016. So is there some kind of epidemic with these plane crashes? Everything from mechanical failure to pilot failure and mistake and error. And just in the last week, 5 crashes, that is a lot. So this is something we're going to keep our eye on. And we know that military spending had increased this year with the passing of the Trump spending bill, the $1.3 trillion spending bill. Will that new effort to fund the military help with this, this logistical nightmare where you're seeing all these crashes all across the country? It's really a disturbing trend, but something we're going to keep our eye on. Now, we have Chance from simplycleanfoods.net on with us. And Chance, I want to ask you this. John's not here today, so it was just me. And I was going through a clip of CNN talking about the president and how he's such a liar. He's dismissive of the truth. He's dismissive of ethics, and he's destroying our democracy. David Gergen said he's killing our democracy. Well, that led me down the road of what's the difference between a democracy and a republic. And we were talking about the utopian socialist dream that these people have. But I want to ask you this. If you could grade the president so far on what he has been able to do in this first year and a half, what grade would you give him?
Joe, I'd give him actually a 9 out of 10. And the reason why I say that is because he has come up against so much opposition, even in his own party. It is amazing that he has gotten as much done as he has gotten done. And I think one of the reasons why that is because he has a background in negotiating and making deals and making things happen in business. So that is definitely a feather in his cap. I think that I could give him a 10 if he could get his own party, his own people in line and come together in unity for the state of the country, for the state of the USA. I mean, getting this these border walls up is important, and I'm sure that you heard the news. He's calling upon the Texas National Guard, New Mexico, right, to help out down there with keeping the illegals on their side of the wall. So I'd give him a 9 out of 10 right now, brother. And I know that might sound optimistic, but I see great things in the next couple of years coming from our president.
One of the other things we were talking about at the beginning of the show was the latest on the trade wars between the United States and China, as China has warned arrogant America as Trump threatened to levy another $100 billion in tariffs on China. And the point I wanted to make earlier that I wasn't able to articulate is that despite this short-term volatility in the market and the pain we see, the president is making tough calls that have not been made in the past, which could add to the short-term pain, but in exchange for more long-term prosperity for our nation. And as long as this doesn't go to a real hot war, we should be fine. But you're going to feel it at first, and that's always with change. Change always hurts. Very little bit to a whole lot, and people know what I'm talking about, whether it's anything from quitting smoking or to any habit you want to change and any behavior. It takes time, and it's not easy, and that's what I see here with these trade wars. We have been at an unfair advantage for so long that going against the grain and trying to change things up, it obviously these other countries aren't going to go along with it willingly, since they've been at the beneficial end of the stick for so long that they're of course they're gonna push back. But we might need to see this temporary pain for that long-term prosperity, as I said. But Chance, do you have any thoughts on the latest from China calling us arrogant, saying that they're ready for a trade war, a long-term trade war?
I do. I'm not an expert on international affairs, but this is what we know. When you hit someone in the pocketbook, they tend to respond. Now, sometimes they'll respond in a positive way, sometimes they'll respond in a negative way. We are going to have some pain. But see, this goes back to the Clinton years when we gave away, and before, when we gave away all of our jobs. I mean, we used to make things. We made a lot of things, right? We still make a few things, but mostly software, right? So you've got to hit these guys where it hurts, and that's in their pocketbook. This is not fair trade. NAFTA, this whole thing, it's not fair trade. We always seem to be the group of people that get hurt the most in any trade agreement. And it seems to me that the ones that are making these deals, the elite, the politicians, they come out of this just fine, right? So, because there's these side deals, this fatback that's included in every one of these trade agreements. So I think that we're going to have some pain, Joe. I think that we're going to deal with, for a long time, some higher prices on things that we enjoy every single day, right? I think that there's going to be a situation that's going to come up with our currency. We're going to see, I think, a currency drop pretty soon, as well as they're holding a lot of our debt, as you know, and they'll use that against us. So absolutely, we're going to experience some pain, but like anything in life, those That's short amount of pain if the ultimate goal is to get our country on solid footing and to for our future, for our kids, for our grandkids, so that they have something to look forward to. I think that pain is worth it.
Yeah, and I agree with you, and I think much of what is being said in the mainstream media misrepresents the truth about these tariffs, and they obviously are only looking on the short-term, more doomy aspects of what this will bring in their long-term agenda of trying to make the president look bad and make him look unstable and unhinged, as they have been doing since his candidacy. And anything to pile on, they're going to do that. So do we even take the spin from the mainstream media or take this at face value? Should we take this at face value like we see nobody in the alternative media does with the mainstream media? But when it comes to issues, as you said, foreign policy or economic issues, or when foreign policy and economic issues are intertwined, I'm not an expert either, Chance. I don't know what to think. So I'm going to dig down into the numbers. I know we have a huge trade deficit, $1 billion trade deficit with China already. So I want to look and see how these tariffs will affect that deficit before I make my opinions on this matter. But yeah, it is. Nobody's going to talk about that long-term prosperity. They're only going to focus on that short-term doom. And you pointed out, as did I earlier, that China is the biggest holder of our debt, and that is the one area where they really could hurt us if they wanted to by releasing all the treasuries that they held, which would, in my view, in my estimation, lead to some pretty heavy inflation, at least initially, if all that money were to come flooding back into circulation here in the U.S. But something we're definitely going to keep our eyes on, and something we're going to definitely continue to report on moving forward. Chance, I want to ask you a few more things, and then we'll take the last 15 minutes and talk about simplycleanfoods.net. And I did get the coffee you sent. I have not grinded up the beans yet, though. I couldn't find my coffee grinder, and when I remember, I'm already at the studio, so I forget to bring the coffee. So I'm going to go buy a bean grinder when I go to the store either today or tomorrow, and I will let you know how that coffee is. But we'll get into all that. I want to ask you about the YouTube shooter and the censorship battle before we move on to simplycleanfoods.net. And one thing that's so fascinating about what happened with this YouTube shooter, imagine if it was a white male who was an NRA member and a conservative. This would still be front and center in the news, and they would still be talking about why guns need to be banned and why the Second Amendment is bad. But this shooter went against the grain in every respect, from being Iranian, from being a vegan, to not being a Christian at all, and on and on and on. And we saw this blowback. And my father asked yesterday, do we think that this is the inevitable result of the censorship, of the oppression, of the demonization of the truth, that people feel they're left with no other recourse than to commit violence? Is this the inevitable outcome of this censorship and campaign of lies and oppression?
I monitored that situation pretty closely, and I heard your show just the other day. At first, the information that was released was that this woman, there was some kind of a tiff, and that she was somehow related to the YouTube as an employee or something like that. And it comes out, and the truth of the matter is she is one of many people that have been demonetized. Now, I can't speak for her because, of course, she was into some other strange things. But I can say on the whole that I know, and you know both, a lot of folks that are in our circles that are out there speaking the truth. And because they're doing so, their income has been cut. First in half, now not everything. They've been taken completely down. We've got folks out there like the Health Ranger, Mike Adams, who's got great information that he passes on every day to hundreds of thousands of listeners, gone, right? I mean, so it does come right back to this. We talk about hitting you in the wallet, right, in the back pocket. They understand that by demonetizing these folks, they're going to stop talking about what's important, right? They're not going to do it for free, right? And so I don't condone her behavior, but I understand the frustration, brother. I really do. I understand the frustration that's behind it, It's sad, but I've got to say, I mean, we've got to stand up, each and every one of us, as not just Christians, but as citizens of the United States, and talk about in groups like we used to in the family unit and the community. Start talking about what's important. Start writing our congressmen. Start, exercising our right to speech, right? So if they take away one thing, you know what? That's okay. We'll figure out another way. There's a new platform out there called DTube, and we're seeing that some of these guys are moving over to DTube to get their message across. So, we're not going to be silenced, brother. We're not going to be silenced. It is important that, the mainstream media, they've got their side, we've got our view, and somewhere in the middle, we're going to find some truth. And it's only if we stand up for the Lord, if we stand up, for our rights, and as a citizen and as a Christian, that we're going to make any progress at all, my brother.
Yeah, very well said, Chance. Well, let's do this. We got exactly 15 minutes left. So let's get into what's going on at simplycleanfoods.net. We know that several people have who listen to the show have ordered products from you, and we'd love to hear feedback from the customers and what they think. And folks, you can send that feedback to studio@hagmanandhagmann.com, or you can send it to Joe Hagmann at yahoo.com. We'd love to hear what you think. But as I said before, you sent just recently the bag of coffee that I have not had a chance to try, but you say that it's some of the best coffee you've ever had, which I'm excited to try. I haven't even had coffee yet today, and it's already about 1 o'clock. So I got to get that coffee grinder. But what are some of your other favorite foods from Simply Clean Foods, James?
Well, let me just chat about the coffee real quick. The reason why we sent you beans is because it's important that you don't grind the beans until you're ready to use them. Think of the coffee bean like an almond or a pecan. It's naturally protected in that state. It's when you grind it that you release all of the flavors, right? So when you buy ground coffee in the store, if it's been in the store, if it's been 6 months since it was first ground, that coffee is going to taste bitter, right? It does go stale. It does have a shelf life. So the wonderful thing about beans is until you're ready to use them, just keep them whole. Keep them as the whole bean. And then we go one step further, Joe. We put these beans in a special Mylar package. And what that does is it maintains the freshness. So we get more of a shelf life up to like 9 months in the package itself. So as far as the flavor goes, I've been drinking coffee since I was a young man, and I've enjoyed some pretty good coffee over the world, but the last time I remember having coffee this smooth is when I lived in Hawaii, and I got to through some local people, I got a hold of some 100% Kona coffee grown at high elevations in volcanic soil. Well, this is the closest I've ever come to experiencing that kind of flavor. No afterbite, right? Medium roast, just simply smooth. And what's neat about it is after you take a drink, you're going to taste this hint of chocolate. And it's wonderful. There's no chocolate in the coffee, of course, but it's just such a nice flavor to start out your day.
Well, I can't wait to try the coffee. I love coffee too, Chance. I love the different variety of coffee beans and flavors that they have. And that is a great tip, is to not grind up the coffee beans until you're going to use them. But everything from the Arabian coffee to the Colombian coffee to the Sumatran coffee, there are everything and anything in between. And there's actually a little coffee shop that opened up right by my house that does all these crazy flavors. And one of my favorite, it's called Breakfast with Elvis. It's this peanut butter banana blend, and it sounds terrible, but I'm telling you, it's probably one of the best coffees I've ever had, and it is really subtle in the peanut butter and banana flavor. And I don't know what makes it such a great it tastes so great, but it is one of my favorites, and I really can't wait to grind up some of that coffee and try some for myself. But I love coffee too. There's nothing better than first thing in the morning getting up and drinking a nice hot cup of coffee. That's for sure.
Amen. Well, this is from Honduras, and It is 100% organic. It's the only way that they do things down there, brother. They don't use Monsanto seeds. They don't use pesticides, because they don't have to. I mean, the soil is so rich in nutrients and flavor, right? So you have a great bean from the very start. So yeah, we love the coffee, and not because it's ours, but because we chose it specifically, for its mellow flavor. And it is now on the website, simplycleanfoods.net. That's www.simplycleanfoods.net, and it's only $9.95 for a bag. That includes your shipping, so we'll ship it right to your house, free of charge in the upper 48 states.
Well, that's awesome. And Chance, I want to ask you what some of your other favorite foods are from your product line, as well as some of your customers, some of the feedback you've gotten from them, what they enjoy, and as far as the individual foods and as far as the packs that you offer. What are some of the more popular packs that people buy? But as far as the foods are concerned, we know many storable and survival foods have sometimes can have a cardboard-like taste and just not have that appeal as far as good food. But your food, as I've tried, tastes great, at least from what I've tried. And we know 100% organic, GMO-free. You can't beat that. And one ingredient, per food. So if you get apples, it's the only ingredient. You don't have all the other stuff in there that you see so often. And I'm glad you mentioned that about Honduras. Isn't it amazing how the rest of the world goes about growing and preparing food, and how we do it in such a destructive manner as to devoid the food of its nutrients and vitamins that are the only purpose that it really serves, which is vital to our body and how our body functions. But what are some of the better tasting favorite foods that you and some of your listeners or some of your customers have had?
Yeah, I just heard back from a mom of 3, and she was, honestly, Joe, she was skeptical. So she ordered our 30-day fruit pack, and now she wants to buy the full 1-year food pack. So she said that she handed her children the bananas, the strawberries, the peaches, and the apples, and she mixed them in a bag. And she said the kids, even her 2-year-old, the kids absolutely love them. So that says a lot, because, kids, what they want, right, is sugar, right? What they want is, their favorite little snack foods and their Go-Gurt. For these kids to say, Mom, this is great, can I have some more? That says a lot, right? So we try to teach people, there is only one ingredient, and it is completely GMO-free, and it's got a 25-year shelf life. But the key is you can use this every day, folks. You don't have to just store this for the future. You can use this every single day, and you never, ever throw away your food, because it's got, even once you open it, they're resealable. You've got 6 months to use the balance once you open the food. So instead of going to the grocery store and throwing away fresh produce, why do that, right? Save yourself some fuel, some time, and just purchase some of these bags. As a matter of fact, if I may, Joe, because I know we're going to run out of time, for your audience, if they go to www.simplycleanfoods.net, we had already reduced the price of that 30-day fruit and vegetable pack by $100, so it was $4.49. Now I think it's $3.49. Hagmann listeners get an additional 10% off of that. So you'll save even more by using the code Simply Clean. Just use the code Simply Clean. Support the Hagmann and Hagmann Show. We are so proud to sponsor you guys. We believe in what you're doing every single day. You are the truth. You are, the folks that are getting that message out, and we appreciate it.
Absolutely. And you are the sponsor for the upcoming 2018 Occupy Conference, which if you want to get tickets and you want to stay in the same hotel as the conferences, you're going to have to order your tickets very soon. Coach Dave yesterday or 2 days ago said that there are not many hotel rooms in that hotel where the conference is being held left. And you can go to Coach Dave Live and get the tickets there, register there, a great lineup of speakers, and you're sponsoring this event, Chance. What does that entail, just real quickly, and what can people expect who are coming to the conference?
Well, if you like weapons, we're going to have weapons. If you like coffee, we're going to be giving away free coffee, and you'll be able to sample the entire Simply Clean Foods line. We're going to have samples ready to go. Probably the sweetest GMO-free corn you've ever tasted in your life. We're going to have corn and strawberries and peaches and everything. We're going to have it all available to you to try. I hope to see you folks there. It's going to be an amazing conference, and we're going to have lots of toys for sale as well, stun guns and some great knives, great quality knives, and so many other things. I can't wait to see you there and shake your hand in person and maybe pray with you if that's what the Lord calls us to do.
Absolutely, and it's I know that you sponsored the Hear the Watchman conference. You've been doing that for a number of years. I think that's the last time we actually saw each other was in Dallas in 2016, I want to say. And it's always such a fun thing to get together with people and to meet them face to face and to see people you only get to see once in a great while and sit down and spend some time and talk with them. And there's nothing like developing those one-on-one relationships with people, and it's great. I think it's basically like for people who don't go to church, it's like church once in twice a year, depending on how many of these conferences you go to. But for me, every time I go to one of these conferences, I would much rather listen to any presentation given by a speaker 10 times more so than talking to them on an interview for the radio show or whatever. It's so much different getting to see them in real time in person and getting to hear their message sitting right there. And I don't know why that is, but maybe it's just the whole experience of it. But there is a huge difference, and that's one of the things I love about these conferences too. And they're always, it's a great place to network, it's a great place to fellowship. And Chance, are you going to be, you said you're going to be bringing some of your food and supplies and stuff. So if people want to buy, let's say, a year pack there, or do they sign up? Can they receive it there, or how does that work?
All of the above. If they'd like to buy a single package, that will be available. A 30-day pack, a 1-year pack, they can take it with them. We'll have a huge supply, or we can ship it to them after the conference. They can sign up for the pay-as-you-go program, or they can get 0% free financing on the spot right there in Ohio. So absolutely, that will all be available to them. And I do want to, real quick, just I know we're running out of time. I want to say this. You're absolutely right about one thing. I enjoy going to these conferences not just to share our product and give preparedness advice and survival advice, but Joe, we are a minority now. Christians, I say, are a minority. So it is so cool, brother, when you can come together and make friends. I have made lifelong friends at some of these conferences, relationships that would not have been possible without that one-on-one contact. I have prayed for so many folks that have told us many things. And you've heard the same thing, Joe. Where I live, there's just no one of like mind. They all think I'm crazy. They roll their eyes when I talk to them. Well, when you come to these conferences, folks they're on the same page as you. They understand. They're dealing with the same issues. Right? They feel like outsiders, but not there. They give each other hugs and exchange phone numbers, and that's what it's all about, brother. It's called the Remnant, and I really look forward to these conferences, and I really look forward to seeing you too. I remember back in 2016, I looked over from the table, and you were surrounded by people, and I'm thinking, man, is Brian Adams in the house? What's going on? And I look over, you got all these people shaking your hand. You were such a celebrity, but it was funny.
And just in the last few minutes here, Chance, one of the things that is so uncomfortable is what you just described, because we live our lives, 99.9% of our lives, we're just, regular, normal people going about doing our work, doing what we have to do. And then we go to a place like this and everybody wants to meet you and shake your hand. And it's a wonderful thing. At the same time, it makes me very uncomfortable because, everybody is the same. But I understand that. And it is really a huge change when that happens, and I don't know how to better explain it, but it is a whole interesting and experience unto itself. But Chance, the promo code Simply Clean, is that correct?
Simply Clean, yeah. Just use the SIMPLY space CLEAN, and you folks will get an additional 10% off of every purchase, even if it's on sale, plus you get the free shipping to the upper 48 states. So yeah, please take advantage of that, guys. We can't, of course, do that forever, right? Food prices aren't going down. I don't know of any prices that are going down.
Right.
So yeah, please take advantage of that, folks, and support the Hagmanns. Every purchase that you make through simplycleanfoods.net supports this program and keeps these guys in the air doing what they do best, and that's sharing the Word of God and getting this important information out there.
Amen. We are out of time. I want to thank everybody for joining us. Next week, I'll be here solo. John will be with us some of the days. We'll have to see how that goes. Have a great weekend, everyone.
The Hagmann Daily Show is brought to you by the Hagmann Report. Tune in to the Hagmann Report weekdays, 7 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time. For more information, go to HagmannReport.com. That's HagmannReport.com.